This is the starting lineup on Sports Radio 1350, The Winner.
Welcome back into the starting lineup. I am Scott Chambers. He is Blake Mitchell. 24 past the hour right now. Sunshine today, high of 79. We are joined by Peter Schiff right now. We apologize for the delay to our listeners after promoting that. We had some technical difficulties. Good morning, Peter. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
We are doing great.
We want to get right into it because we don't have a tremendous amount of time, and we want to make sure that we've got plenty of time to get to what we want to talk about today. I wanted to start off first. Can you give our listeners a little bit of an idea on what your credentials are if they're not familiar with you? That way they know you're not just some schmuck like me spewing forth stuff. They want to know that you're legit.
Well, I mean, I run a brokerage firm called Euro Pacific Capital out in New York, although I have offices all around the country. I've authored 2 books. What I authored called Crash Proof, How to Profit from the Coming Economic Collapse, which came out in February of 2007, which basically predicted every single thing that's happened in the last year. I don't think I left anything out. And my newest book just came out last week called The Little Book of Bull Moves and Bear Markets.
Okay. That's what we wanted to know. I already knew that, but I wanted to make sure our listeners heard it from you.
And this information, of course, can be found online at Europac.net. Great website to visit, Europac.net, to find out Peter's credentials and all the information on the books. They can purchase the books on the website, too, right, Peter?
Yeah, you can get them on my website, which is www.europac.net, or just directly, Amazon, Barnes & Noble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got that site bookmarked so I can check up on the postings there.
They're in the stores, too. They're in the bookstores.
Great. Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, places like that. You can go out and check it out today. And Peter has a great list of credentials. With everything that's going on right now, I can imagine you're a busy guy.
Yeah, there's not that many people that actually forecast all these events. But the most troubling part of my forecast, in my book, Crash Proof, when I described the U.S. economy as this house of cards that was, impressive on the outside, but a disaster waiting to happen beneath the surface, the worst-case scenario was not that our phony economy fell apart. I knew that was going to happen. And when I say phony economy, I mean an economy that's based on debt, on consumer debt, where people borrow money from the rest of the world to simply buy stuff, to buy houses, to buy cars, to buy big screen TVs and cell phones. I mean, you can't run an economy where you simply borrow money. You have to run an economy on the opposite of that, on underconsumption, on savings and investment. So I knew this phony economy was going to collapse. But the real danger that I forecast was not the collapse. That we could live with. It would have been bad. But the worst part was what the government might do to try to stop it from happening, to interfere with the free market, to try to pretend that we can continue to borrow and spend. And that's exactly what this bailout plan is all about. And everything the government has done in the last 6 months or so is confirming my worst-case scenario, that we're headed for an inflationary depression, and the U.S. government is going to destroy this economy, they're going to destroy the value of our money, and they're going to create an economic environment that's even worse than the 1930s.
Right now, Peter, it seems like Washington is trying to shove this bailout package down our throats, telling us it's the right thing. Well, our listeners tell us otherwise. We find out that people around the state are not interested in this phony bailout package. Why is the bailout package so ridiculous? Why do you find the bailout package?
The U.S. government can't bail out anybody because we're broke. So we're just going to have to borrow more money from China and Japan, which is part of the problem, or we're going to have to print more money and create even more inflation, which is going to drive up the cost of living for average Americans. And, all that's really happening is the guys in Washington are trying to bail out their pals on Wall Street with everybody else's money. They're trying to transfer wealth and purchasing power from average American citizens who are struggling to make ends meet to guys that are making hundreds of millions and tens of millions of dollars, who basically drove their companies into bankruptcy by taking huge bets, and now we're supposed to bail them out. This is all nonsense. And, of course, the real root cause of the problem, George Bush said that Wall Street got drunk, and he's right. They did get drunk. But what Bush forgot to mention was that it was Alan Greenspan, it was Ben Bernanke that poured the alcohol. It's the government that did this. Wall Street simply responded to what the government was doing.
Will we ever hold these guys accountable for this nonsense?
I hope so. I mean, I'm holding them accountable. I mean, I said if there was a deck of cards, for this economic crisis, Alan Greenspan would be the ace of spades. But it's not just the Fed, the government. I mean, the government, Freddie and Fannie, I mean, they never should have been created in the first place. But once they created them, they created the moral hazard because people would lend people money to buy houses because Fannie and Freddie guaranteed the mortgage. So it didn't matter if the borrower could actually pay the money back because the government promised to do it if he couldn't. So it enabled people to borrow a lot more money than they normally could. And, all this easy credit didn't really make home ownership more affordable. It made it more expensive because whenever the government funnels credit in an area, prices go up. The reason real estate got so expensive was because it was so easy to borrow money to buy it. The same thing with college tuitions. The reason college is so expensive today is because there's so much government money going to colleges. But it doesn't benefit the students. They would go to college anyway. Without all these government loans, college tuitions would be cheap, and students could go to school without incurring debt. But because of all the government money, students have to borrow huge sums of money. They graduate in debt, and the beneficiaries are the universities, the bloated universities, who get to make a lot of money off of this whole con.